A 100-ton elephant accidentally fell from an airplane. If they didn't take action, the elephant would surely die. The soldier immediately grabbed his gear and jumped from the plane to rescue it. At that moment, the elephant seemed to sense the danger and let out desperate cries of distress, though the soldier kept adjusting his position mid-air, hoping to land precisely on the elephant's back as their descent speed kept increasing. Completing the mission became increasingly difficult, with only 1 kilometer left to the ground. If he didn't deploy the parachute on the elephant, they would both be crushed on impact. Jake immediately adjusted his position again and finally grabbed hold of the rope on the elephant's back. At this point, they were less than 500 meters from the ground. Jake quickly reached for the disconnected safety rope and wrapped it around his hand. Then he yanked open his own parachute, hoping to use the pull of his chute to trigger the elephant's parachute. Unexpectedly, the safety rope suddenly came loose. Fortunately, the parachute pack had already deployed and opened successfully just 1 second before landing. This gave the elephant quite the skydiving experience. The villagers saw their sacred elephant land safely and rushed over, cheering in celebration. Turns out this was a ceasefire zone. To build good relations with the local villagers, Jake would teach the children to read and write in his spare time and help the villagers with their farm work. Soon, Jake's efforts earned the villagers' trust, but this drew the enemy's resentment. That night, while the squad was out, they launched a surprise attack on the village. Not only did they drag the elephant away by force, they also threatened the villagers, saying if they stayed close to Jake, they would all be killed. When Jake returned the next day, the elephant they revered as sacred had been brutally slaughtered. They felt deeply guilty about this and decided to find another elephant to compensate the villagers. To their surprise, the captain fully supported their plan, so the group set out immediately and soon arrived at a remote village. The plane then landed slowly outside the village. After checking that there were no enemies around, they felt safe enough to head into the village. To their amazement, not only were there many elephants here, they were actually living in harmony with the humans. So they immediately found the village chief and excitedly said they wanted to buy an elephant. But the chief saw an opportunity and demanded an outrageous price, asking for $400,000. However, after some haggling by Jake, they finally settled on a price. With a loud trumpet, a boy came charging over riding an elephant. But unexpectedly, the chief raised the price again, because this elephant only listened to the boy, so they'd have to add another $200,000 to take the boy with them. In the end, Jake dipped into his personal savings and barely managed to buy the elephant, but just as they were about to board the plane, the boy absolutely refused to get on. It turned out that if the elephant moved around, the plane would be in danger, but Jake and his team wouldn't listen to the warning and carried the boy onto the plane. Sure enough, the elephant followed right behind. However, as the plane approached its destination, the elephant suddenly woke up. It began to struggle in panic, and the plane immediately started tilting. The frightened elephant tried to stand up, but the more it stood, the more violently the plane shook. Just as they were about to crash into the mountain ahead, the pilot quickly pulled up on the controls and made an emergency landing on a plane. The terrified elephant immediately ran out. Jake and his team rushed into the forest after it. Fortunately, the elephant heard the boys' calls and came back, but the pilot thought the elephant was too dangerous and actually abandoned Jake's group and took off alone. Left with no choice, they had to continue on foot. Luckily, they pooled their money and bought a used vehicle to transport the elephant, but they hadn't gone far before the vehicle collapsed under the weight, so they had no choice but to switch to a ferry. Just as everyone was feeling relieved, they unexpectedly ran into an enemy ambush.